of bacterial, fungi, nematodes, virus resistances all come from this great treasure trove that we keep. Now, I like to sort of end on what modern plant breeding does. Okay, this is a slide from my own project. I guess I get to talk about myself maybe a little bit. In 2007, the Nebraska wheat crop produced about 5 billion pounds a week. Okay, now that was worth about $750 million. Okay? Now I can't take credit for all of that because there's a lot of things that go into the yield of wheat besides the genetics. But it so happens the genetics were worth 22%. So of that $750 million, about $167 million were due to what the University of Nebraska and the ARS worked together on. But I can't take full credit for that because half the varieties in the state at that time came from other programs like Colorado. So of that, the half that comes from my program meant that we have added about $83 million to the farm gate in our productivity. That's what plant breeding does. That's what modern domestication does. Now, the good news is that our market share is actually over 60% now, so we're doing a little better. That's good news. But frankly, I love people making money out of my inventions. I think it's great. I'm a tax-supported institute. I want every farmer to be as productive and as wealthy as they can afford to be. But frankly, I didn't get into this business to make somebody wealthy. So let's take another way of assessing where you are. That 5 billion pounds of wheat feeds about 28 million people. That's bigger than Australia. And we're a relatively small wheat-producing state. Whoops, pardon me. If you take the 22%, that's about 6 million people get fed due to genetics. And at the time we had 50% market share, about 3 million people get fed from the work that my and my colleagues do. That's what makes me sleep well at night. Okay? That's what plant breeding is all about. And quite frankly, the Colorado wheat crop's larger than the Nebraska crop, so the figures for Scott Haley, Pat Byrne, the team, Jerry Johnson, the team they have, would look even more impressive. Okay? But that's what keeps plant breeders happy. That's why we continue on the role of domestication. And I always like to end with this one, getting back to our sort of political theme. No man qualifies as a statesman who is entirely ignorant of the problems of wheat. Socrates, 300 BC. And the good news is, after this talk, you are all honorary statesmen because you know the problems of wheat. With that, thank you.
We have time for a couple of questions.
Yes?
Touch on some of the diseases that are in the wheat crop now,
Surely. So is your question, where did the diseases originate? Because you could talk about the centers of diversity, right? Okay. Well, the disease you probably heard most popular in the press is UG99, the new racist Semrus. Now, unfortunately, you won't see that very much in Colorado because it needs freestanding moisture, and your dry conditions tend to make that less, okay? But it comes out of Kenya. I gotta want to be careful. You'll discover there's a lot of things where people name pests after their neighbor. I mean, think about it. The Russian wheat aphid, okay, probably came from Iraq, could have come from South Africa, but it's the Russian wheat aphid, right? The Hessian fly, supposed to be brought over in the straw with the Hessian troops who were the terrible mercenaries during the Revolutionary War. Well, a lot of horses were brought back and forth, and a lot of them were in straw bedding, and any of that straw bedding could have had Hessian fly in it. But it seems it coincided with the Hessian fly. With the Hessians, it's the Hessian fly. Well, it probably originated in Kenya or Uganda. It's Uganda 99, because the Kenyans said it came from Uganda. Okay? And what's interesting is the reason why we have that is it's the most ecologically unsustainable wheat production system I've ever seen. Kenya is like a greenhouse. You can plant wheat every day or every week. You can harvest it, 120 days later. They have no way of not having a green bridge, so where it goes from a diseased plant to a susceptible plant. It's almost impossible. And worst of all, it's at high elevations, which means you have high UV, which means you have greater mutations. It's a natural climate. So that's one. If you wanted to look for barley yellow dwarf, you would go to Ethiopia. That's the origin of barley yellow dwarf. Russian wheat aphid would be the Central West Asia, which would be Iran, Iraq, those areas. Okay, and you can track out where these things come from. And again, generally, the crop has diversified at the same time as the pest. And the interesting part would be Ethiopia is a secondary center of diversification. So the crop moved in, must have then came in contact with a pest. And that's where the diversification for the pest came to. So there are these secondary movements. And we talk about centers, but there's some crops which have a very diverse center. There is no specific center, you might say. Sorghum happens to have a very loose collection of centers. Did that answer your question? Yes, I see one way in the back.
What is your take on the future possibility for perennial wheat and other grains?
Okay, so the question is the future possibility of perennial wheat and other grains. I guess I'm not a particular fan of it, okay? And the reason why I'm not is one of the major diseases that we have in wheat in Nebraska and in Colorado is wheat streak mosaic virus. And the way we get rid of wheat streak mosaic virus is by having a dead zone. So, you know, if you look at where that disease is spread, it's wherever a crop's been hailed, so that there's volunteer wheat that grows up and it forms what they call a green bridge. And that green bridge means that the viraliferous mites that come off of the maturing crop go to the green crop and then infect it. And then as that crop dies, then they move to the emerging new fall planting crop. And in perennial wheat, you'd have to have a lot of disease resistances that we don't need, that we don't currently have, because the short cycle is one way of preventing those diseases from spreading. Now, do I think it can occur? Absolutely. There's certainly a lot of ecological reasons for wanting perennial wheat, because you don't have to plow a field. Even no-till would have less runoff and things like that. But I think the disease barrier, as well as I think most growers want the ability to switch out. You know, to say, okay, this year we grow wheat, next year we're going to grow coastal millet, following year will be fallow, the next year we'll do something else. So I think when you put it into a perennial like alfalfa, then you have to change your mindset. But I do think the diseases would be the #1 concern that I would have. Okay. Thank you.
Straight on now to our panel, and we put together a wonderful panel for you today. And as most of you know, when you get more than 1 or 2 faculty together, you require a moderator. So I'm very excited to introduce our moderator today, Dr. Henry Thompson. Dr. Thompson is a faculty member here at CSU. He's in the Department of Horticulture and Landscape Architecture. He received his PhD in nutrition from Rutgers University in 1975. And he joined our faculty in 2002 as a professor of horticulture and also as the director of the CSU Cancer Prevention Laboratory. His areas of expertise are breast cancer prevention and human nutrition. And in particular, he studies how foods can reduce our risk of developing different types of cancers. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Henry Thompson.
This is the part where I'm supposed to get you real excited and you've been sitting there for 1 hour. So first thing I want you to do is let's all stand up. Now the second thing I want you to do, I was up in Nebraska and I visited Steve and they did this thing. I can't actually remember what they did, but I was impressed. But I know for you to really kind of stay in your seat, you have to have the opportunity to say something. So we want to show Dr. Benzinger that we got real school pride here, and I think it's like grand. So everybody shout on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Go Rams! You know, that wasn't very good. So let's try it out one more time. We love our Rams, so let's go Rams! Okay, you all sit back down. Now the way we're going to work this, we decided that the panelists actually want to hear what